All right, we're live now. So, nice to have a chance to be here with you, John. Um, this is a private conversation recorded for posterity, so I think it's an insight into both of our worlds. So, nice to have a chance to talk through. Um, been going through this the framework from the Search Inside Yourself program, where they're working through the different levels and looking now at the practice of motivation. So, as I mentioned in previous sessions, on the foundation of mindfulness, develop some self-awareness, some self-management, ability to control our actions, and so forth. But the crowning capability that we develop with respect to ourself is our ability to develop and sustain a motivation that leads to beneficial improvements, for ourselves, others, whatever the goals we're striving to accomplish. So these four levels culminating in motivation are all about ourself, and then the last two levels in that Search Inside Yourself program are about building empathy for others, and then leadership skills through leadership skills through different methods. So in terms of motivation, in the last session we talked about alignment. I'll just put up these points again. Motivation having three aspects. The last session we talked about alignment. Now this session we'll look at envisioning, and then resilience, which is really how you sustain this over time. So why don't we take just a few minutes just for both of us to settle our minds and to recenter, bring some peace into our hearts, and then recall a bit about this concept of alignment and flow by becoming aware of our current state. So we can begin as usual just by taking a deep breath. However, we may need to readjust our body, stretching a bit. And then with our second breath, focusing on relaxation, just allowing ourselves to relax deeply. And then with our third breath, thinking, what is important right now? So the foundation of all of these practices is just becoming aware of our inner and outer circumstances without judgment and with a mind of curiosity and kindness. So we become aware of our outer circumstances, our room, the space we're in, the temperature of the air, what's going on in our lives. And we just situate ourselves in the present moment. Become aware of our body, the feeling of sitting, the feeling of our limbs, skin. We feel each breath as it comes in and out. And by feeling our breath, we are connecting with the present moment. The entire universe is unfolding moment by moment. We have no real knowledge of the future. The past is completely gone. The world is changing constantly. Even our own body is changing breath by breath. Our own mind is changing. And having reconnected with the present moment, with our own breath, we can open our eyes and arise from our meditation. So the one of the things that that I've always appreciated about this kind of these kinds of teachings and practices, they, for myself at least, they never get old if we approach them with a fresh mind. So, for example, the topic of motivation, really, this is a question of leading ourself. And your friend Jennifer, I think. So this is a question of leading ourself. Motivation is, hey, Jenny, welcome. So motivation is a question of leading ourself. So we can talk about leading others. We can talk about leading ourselves. What is leadership? It is simply having the courage to go first into the unknown. And when we're leading other people, what it means really is influencing them. So there's I've heard many people, different times, different venues, different opportunities, or different contexts, that leadership just means influence. So if you're leading other people, leadership just means influence. Are you having some influence? It's somewhat independent of your position in the org chart in a business, or of your title and role and so forth. Are we having an influence on others? So what influences others most is, well, we can influence others through ideas, but one of the main things that influences others is courage, right? Having the courage to take action in the face of uncertainty. And that's probably the thing that we give the most credit to leaders for, is when they can take action in the face of uncertainty and not be controlled by their own fear. So the interesting thing, when we get in touch with the present moment, we realize that everything we've ever known in the universe is already gone. The past has disappeared. Sometimes we've actually lost friends and family who are close to us, or things we've enjoyed. But the more we're in touch with the present moment, the more we realize that everything that's ever existed in the entire universe is gone. Like even the previous version, the version of ourselves that we were yesterday or last year, 10 years ago, and so forth, all of these things are gone. The future hasn't come. We may have ideas about what the future is, but they're totally just notions. They're totally just notional stories that we tell ourselves. Oh, the future's going to be like this. And one of the main things that can depress us is when our ideas about the future don't pan out, right? We think, oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, but it doesn't pan out again and again and again. We sort of accumulate some experience of disappointment, right? And confusion. So in a sense, we're all moving into the unknown moment by moment. And that's where this topic of motivation becomes so powerful. And motivation, I showed the slide briefly before. I'll share it again just briefly. Motivation has these three aspects: alignment, envisioning, and resilience. I talked through these last week a little bit, or last session a little bit, but motivation means, can we direct our own energy in a positive direction? Can we move our own, can we direct our own energy in a positive direction? And that starts with alignment, because what we find is that our energy naturally flows towards the things we really enjoy. And the things you really enjoy are generally the things that bring you an experience of flow. I'm actually going to go backwards in this slide deck. This experience of flow that I talked about last time, if something is challenging but not overwhelming, then you can experience this optimum flow. If something's too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you get stressed. But as we build up skill in something, maybe it's public speaking, or maybe it's, working on a, hobby or something at work, we all experience flow in a different way. But this is where we really find delight and enjoyment in our activities. So when an activity aligns with your capabilities, then you can have that sense of flow. And flow, it brings a natural reward. It is an intrinsically motivating activity. And I tend to think that if you look at where we put energy naturally, it's towards the things that give us flow, or towards the things where something else has hacked our internal reward circuitry. So we all have an internal reward circuitry. Eating brings a natural sense of enjoyment. Drugs, alcohol, the advertisements and movies and TV, they're all designed to sort of induce some experience of like you're going somewhere. In high school, I had a good friend, and he used to just like driving around. He would come pick me up, and I'd get in the car and just drive around, like see if something was going on. Of course, there was never anything going on, but just the sense of like being in a car and driving, like a dog, like sticking its head out the window, right? There's some sense of exhilaration. So there's things that can trick us into giving an artificial sense that we're moving in a beneficial direction. But if we really want to engage in a creative activity, something that's not only generates that internal sense of satisfaction, but it producing something wonderful for ourselves and others, that's where we're looking for flow. That's alignment. But envisioning takes this a step further. This is where we begin to build a mental picture and refine a mental picture of what a positive future could look like. And then resilience is the final piece, where we really have to sustain that. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about envisioning here. In general, with envisioning is a foil or a counter to the natural envisioning process that we all go through naturally, which is generally based on our past experience. So there is in our mind already some picture of what the future looks like. Tomorrow, we're going to do things that are a lot like what we did today and yesterday. Our relationships are going to be much the same. Our characteristics are going to be much the same. So there's an implicit story that's going on already that's mostly based on the past. Now, if you want to know what our envisioning process, our default process is like, we want to ask, what are the current stories we tell about ourselves? Because we're currently telling some stories about what we're like, what life is like, what our relationships are like. And often we don't make those stories conscious, right? They're implicit parts of our story, like, I'm like this, I'm like that. I'm good at this, I'm not good at that, my relationships are like this, my world is like that. There's actually an amazing number of stories that we have going on. And those stories, they're concepts. As I've been saying, we are storytelling primates. Our stories are concepts. These concepts, they don't really age, right? And so some of these stories we've had with us since the time we were children, right? If you were picked on at all as a little child, which probably everybody was, there's this story, I'm an outsider, right? I don't quite fit in. I'm not sure if I fit in, right? So that's a story that's incredibly common for us as a social creature, right? We're all social creatures. And either there's just this overwhelming sense that we do fit in, or there's this nagging worry that we don't fit in. And I don't know where you fall on that part of the spectrum. But one thing that I find interesting is that if you look at the stories that are really popular in mass media these days, they're like these superhero stories are incredibly common, and Harry Potter, right? These are two of the big stories that have just taken off over the last couple of decades. And the superhero stories, they generally a lot of them are based on these mutants, right, who are outcasts. I haven't watched much of these, but I know that roughly they're mutants who are, weirdos and outcasts and persecuted by society and so forth, but they've got superpowers. And they're the very thing that made them outcasts, in fact, is their superpower. So there's something incredibly deep that resonates about that in all of us, the sense of, do we fit in or do we not fit in, right? And if we don't fit in, maybe there's something weird about us, but maybe we can take that thing that's weird about us and make that our superpower, right? And you can maybe find that thing that gives you a sense of flow and double down on it, right? And build on your existing strengths or quirks or whatever they are and create something that's new and fantastic and amazing, right? And that's why these superhero stories, one of the reasons why they're so engaging, right? Or Harry Potter, you take these dorky, quirky little kids, who are, don't fit in, but then they get these magic powers, right? And they go through all these adventures. So there's this hero's journey. One of my mentors and coaches talks about a hero's journey that is always present in mythology and literature and so forth. But we're already telling ourselves some current version of our story. We need to understand that these stories are created by our imagination, just like. That's what stories are. They are created by imagination. They're concepts, right? And we're storytelling primates. And what's interesting, though, is that we're being told a lot of stories. I currently am in the marketing department for a tech startup. And my job is to tell stories, to tell compelling stories that get people to be interested in the product that we sell and buy it and so forth. And that's what marketers do around the world. And marketers are amazingly good at psychology. I'm a sort of junior apprentice in that sense. But marketers know human psychology. They know how to tell a story that's really compelling. If you look at, I was looking at a billboard about advertising recently, right? A billboard about alcohol, right? It was a Coors advertisement. And I was just pondering, alcohol is all just ethanol, right? It's just liquid with some amount of ethanol in it. It all has the exact same physiological effect on people, tastes roughly, the same. But these different beers, right, they all have their own persona, right? If you go to the beach, you need to drink Corona. If you go skiing, you need to drink Coors. If you're watching an ice hockey game, you need to drink Molson. I don't drink, but somehow I internalized those stories from the time I was a child, right, or teenager, whenever it was that people get fascinated with these things. It's nonsense, right? They all taste the same. They just different colored bottles, but it's just a completely made up story that gets people to take action. And the action that we take normally is paying a little bit of money. That's the idea, right? Compel people to pay a little bit of money to participate in some story. Now, motivation is about driving and defining the story yourself, right? Instead of being driven by the stories of others, for example, the stories of your parents, the stories of your peers, what other people think about you, what advertisers think, want you to believe, and so forth. You are defining your own story. And that is what envisioning is about. It is incredibly powerful to define our stories consciously, to make our own story, to define who we want to be, who we think we can be, and to be the one who sets that vision for ourselves. That is the method to accomplish everything that we want to accomplish, is tell ourselves a story, remind ourselves of that story all the time. There's a saying that I've internalized from this mentor of mine, Don Finn. I don't even know if it's his words, but I like this. Make your stories conscious and consciously make your stories. Make your stories conscious and consciously make your stories. So make explicit whatever are the stories that you think you're operating on. I'm good at this. I'm not good at that. My relationship's like this. This is what the future is going to be like. And just get those out, write them down. That can be often helpful. Like, this is what's causing me to, these are my default operating instructions. This is the subconscious picture that I'm giving myself. And then consciously make your stories. Use your own conscious intention to say, for example, here, discovering an ideal future. If everything in your life starting today meets or exceeds your most optimistic expectations, what will your life be like in 5 years? 5 years is it's a nice time horizon. It's far enough into the future that things could be significantly different. Think about where you were 5 years ago, right? 5 years ago, I never thought, my life is very, very different from how I would have imagined 5 years ago. That's a long enough time horizon. You can make some serious change or see some serious change, but it's not exactly like, it's too fantastical, right? So anyway, figure out what's your time horizon that's a sweet spot for your imagination, and then let your imagination rip. Because what you can find is, ask yourself, who are you, right? And what are you doing, right? What's your life like? What do you like? What do you spend your days doing? How do you feel? What's the feeling? Are you waking up happy? That's a good start, right? Waking up happy to be back in the world. How do you feel in your life? Are you feeling peaceful and content and calm and quiet? Are you feeling excited and engaged? Because we might want to take our life in different directions depending on our stage of life. And then, how are your relationships with others? What are your connections? What are the interactions you're having with others, right? These things, they all light up different parts of our imagination. And it's worth spending time with them. Just maybe writing down some ideas. When I was formally, actively involved in Buddhist practice as my main guiding thing, we had these sadhanas. And sadhana is a Sanskrit word, means method for accomplishment. It's like a little booklet, like a prayer booklet, something like that. And this sadhana, you'd sort of recite the sadhana every day. And that gives structure to your imagination, right? Sort of helps remind you of some structure. Now, the sadhanas are full of all this ancient wisdom, right? Really, really rich, great wisdom, and they're a great way to practice. They are handed down from someone else, right? From traditional sources. And that can be a very great way of learning and so forth. There's another technique that I've adopted, which is making these flashcards. And these flashcards are a little bit like build your own method for accomplishment, build your own sadhana. So I created a stack of flashcards like this. I'm this mentor of mine, Don Finn, he said, he does this, keep it to a maximum. He said he has a maximum of 50. Fortunately, I don't have that many. I've got like 15 or 20, something like that. But go through them every day. And they may be quotes that really inspire you, visualizations for your future self, and go through that every day to remind you of like these core ideas. And as I've gained insights that I think I really want to internalize this insight, I really want to sustain this, a vision of myself, right? I'll write that down. I'll write that down and I'll say, in some cases, these are affirmations like I am like this and I am like that. And that's what envisioning is. In other cases, these are ideas that I find useful, but the practice of visualization and envisioning is particularly powerful to light up our imagination. The challenge then is having the vision, but then sustaining it. Right. And so that's where the reminders, the regular reminders. Now, the envisioning, my one caveat would be these kinds of practices were popular from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so forth, but often they focused on the externalities, right? You know, I've got a beautiful house. I've got my wife is 20 years younger than my current wife or whatever. You've got all these, I've got a sports car and a, fabulously well-paid job. And sure, by all means, okay, put in the external characteristics that you want to be accomplishing and so forth. None of that really matters once you've gone through, once you've gotten a little bit of wisdom behind yourself. The CEO of our current company was diagnosed with cancer a year and a half ago, and was on a real short timeline, assuming he was going to die. And that really helped him to reset his priorities. And anytime we have a brush with death, that really does a lot to help reset our priorities. In a podcast he did the other day, he said, you can't take any of that stuff with you. None of your cars, your houses, none of these things can you take with you. So all of us live, there's a saying, all of us live in the jaws of the Lord of Death. I used to, the robes I would wear as a monk, they had a V-shaped neck. And the V-shaped neck, which is similar to what I have right now, was designed to signify the jaws of the Lord of Death. So how about that for keeping that visual? Okay, last chance, ready? What do you want to focus on? I didn't mean necessarily to go quite into that that level of shock value, but it's very powerful if you think what really matters is not the externalities, but it's how I'm engaging with them. It's what mind I'm bringing. It's how I'm responding. Do I have confidence? Do I have a peaceful mind? Doesn't matter if you've got money, don't have money. If you have reputation, don't have reputation. If people look the way you think they should look around you or not, none of that stuff really matters. What matters is, as I'm engaging with my world, is it joyful, right? Is it energizing? Am I connecting with people with a loving heart? Am I sharing the very best of myself with other people? Am I learning everything I possibly can from the situation? Because in the influence that we'll have in that way is far greater than the influence than just focusing on externalities. So drive deep when we're envisioning, right? Drive deep about what are we like on the inside, not just on the outside. What's life like? What are we like on the inside as well? Okay. Thoughts, questions on any of that? That was a bit of a ride, but
Am I muted still?
You're live.
Oh, I am live. All right, there we go. I thought that was really pretty deep, and an aspect of some thought that I've had, but I don't know if it's been broken down into that level of detail before. So I just want to say thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Great.
Um, I think I made a note. I'll ask you another time a question that came about, but it was one of more personal nature, I think, that I found interesting. Well, one that's kind of funny because you said you were a monk, right?
Mm.
So do you has anything changed in your practice and envisioning, for instance, since you've left that life to this life, that whatever that 5 years was that you progressed through?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I feel like I'm still refining the vision that I have from myself, because I feel like the traditional vision that I received as a monk, the traditional Buddhist vision in that case, was incredibly powerful and beautiful and so forth. But it's very traditional, right? It's very like traditional view of things. And the modern vision for like what's the best future for modern people, is a very different kind of vision. It's a very technical vision. It's business oriented. The world looks very different from traditional societies where Buddhism flourished and so forth. So I feel like the vision that we need for our modern society is still sort of taking shape. And so I'm still trying to let that vision form and refine itself. And I think that's one of the things about our vision. You can refine them, right? You can refine that story. Like, so I'm currently still working on what's the vision of an organization that is, where people are individually being enriched and organizationally being enriched. How do you get those two to line up? External activity and success with internal growth. And so I'm having to make my own story much, much more than previously. And I really feel a lot more vulnerable and exposed, because I feel like I'm kind of trying to figure this out and put all the pieces together, as opposed to previously the story was very comfortable, right? It's just like, this is the story, we're all following the same story. And my envisioning is much more like, I'm kind of on the edge. I feel like I'm kind of out on my own here, which is always true in one sense or another. That's always true for all of us. We're always kind of on our own. And I feel like the vision always needs to be something that's personal. It needs to be, and whether you're following a traditional vision or a vision somebody else is giving you, it's always a bit of a challenge to connect that most forward thinking, inspiring, beautiful, bold vision that you might have received from someone else with your personal vision, your personal narrative. And that's always a dialectic, right? It's always an investigation. So I'd say that's the big change for me, that I'm not following somebody else's script now, but I'm also trying not to go uh, too, yeah, too far off the script either. Okay, let's take the last bit of time, maybe 10 minutes or so, to do some meditation. And I'm going to put that slide back up. Whoops. I'm going to put that slide back up. And let's go through this as a thought exercise together in meditation. Let's meditate on this. Let's meditate on this vision and stabilize this vision. As a way of meditating is just meditating on the vision. So what we can do is to, again, just find a comfortable position. Close our eyes if that helps, and just return to our breath a little bit. The purpose of this is to settle our mind, to return to the present. And as you breathe, you can relax a bit. Just feel an internal sense of relaxation. But in this relaxed state, now we can open up to a vision or a story of the future. We can ask ourselves 5 years from now, who will we be? What will our life be like? What will we be doing? Then we can ask ourselves, how will we feel? And what will our relationships be like? Who are we engaging with? What are those relationships like? If everything in your life, starting today, meets or exceeds your most optimistic expectations, what will your life be like in 5 years? And then we can think, the future doesn't exist at all, anywhere. The future is created by our actions, such as the actions we are taking right now and have taken today. The future is created through our vision and through thousands, millions of tiny actions compounding on each other, moment by moment, day by day. So we can think through the activities we've done together here. May we bring this vision of our future into reality for ourselves and others, for the benefit of ourselves, and mostly for the benefit of the people around us in our world. Then we can open our eyes and arise from our meditation.